Welcome everyone. The webinar will begin in just a second and will be recorded. Feel free to connect with the Campaign for Grade Level Reading on social media. On Facebook, like the page Campaign for GLR, and on Twitter, follow the account @ReadingByThird. Please use hashtag LearningTuesdays and tag us to tweet anything you learn from today's webinar, and we will be sure to retweet. We encourage you to share your questions, reflections, and observations on social media. Once again, we would love to connect with you on Facebook, like that page, Campaign for GLR, Twitter, follow the account @ReadingByThird, and use those hashtags GLR Reading and hashtag LearningTuesdays. Okay, once again, welcome to today's webinar. My name is Sierra Sanchez, and I will be behind the scenes helping to produce this webinar. I have just a few housekeeping details before we get started. First, we would love for you to introduce yourself, so please use the chat box at the bottom of the screen to share your name, city or state, and your organization. And be sure to select panelists and attendees so that we all know who is here. All attendees are in listen-only mode, but we encourage your engagement by posting questions in the Q&A box. We will dedicate the last 20 to 30 minutes to respond to the questions you post during the discussion. This webinar is being recorded, and a link to the recording will be emailed on Friday to everyone who registered. And we are streaming the webinar on Facebook Live. We will be posting a brief on-screen evaluation during Q&A and highly encourage you to respond. This helps us with our commitment to continuous improvement at the Campaign for Grade Level Reading. Lastly, before we start, next week on October 6th at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, we hope you will join us to learn what early educators could teach parents, teachers, and the rest of us, and why it matters now. This session will feature the voices of early education leaders addressing how they are engaging young children and their families during the pandemic and the key learnings from their work. On October 13th, we will have an exciting doubleheader with Scaling Solutions for the Childcare Crisis, Technology and Shared Services at 12:30 p.m., which is 9:30 a.m. Pacific time. And Telenovela as Teacher, Univision, and Too Small to Fail, Reaching Parents Where They Are at 3 p.m. We hope you will join us for both of these sessions to explore the best strategies and ideas for early school success. And we will be sure to add a link in the chat box for more information and registration for these upcoming learning opportunities. Joining you now is Emily, consultant with the Campaign for Grade Level Reading. Thank you and enjoy the webinar.
Thank you, Sierra, and thank you to all of you. Welcome, and thank you for joining us for today's GLR Learning Tuesdays webinar, which is titled Promising High-Tech, High-Touch Solutions for Back to School. And this is part of our ongoing series on learning loss recovery. And here we are, now just to kind of frame this a little bit, here we are, it is September 29th, and we can be sure that all students across the US have now started school in some way. I think I just saw the last first day of school message. So everybody's back in school, but this year, the year of 2020, we can be sure that no two districts look the same. Some are 100% virtual, others are managing a hybrid model, while others are working to bring their students back in person full time. And with all of these variables, innovative strategies have emerged in local districts using a combination of high touch and high tech approaches. So this is like creating technology pods where students can come in and be supervised by district staff, where every student is provided broadband access, where parents are provided with detailed online learning guides for this new virtual learning, to establishing regular webinars and communications with parents to alleviate some of the stress that they're feeling around this transition back to school. So these leading educators across the country are going above and beyond to help students, especially the youngest students, stay on track for early school success. And so today we have the chance to learn from 3 of these outstanding superintendents who are innovating ways to address the immense challenges that come with back to school in this crazy year of 2020. Through their high-tech and high-touch strategies, they are working to ensure that the most vulnerable children get the access to the learning that they need to address that unfinished learning and to stay on track. And so our hope for today is that you'll be able to both make use of and share these strategies and ideas to support more children and families as they begin the new school year in this challenging time of COVID-19. And before we get to meet our stellar superintendents, I have the privilege of introducing our moderator and renowned early education leader, Lisa Roy of the Buffett Early Childhood Institute. Lisa will then introduce the rest of our panelists. So Lisa is the Director of Program Development at the Buffett Early Childhood Institute at the University of Nebraska, and she was previously Executive Director of the Early Childhood Department at Denver Public Schools, so has definitely that school-based knowledge and experience, and was also the Equity Impact Group lead with Grantmakers for Education. Her work focuses on improving educational opportunities and increasing access and options in healthcare and human services for underserved or underrepresented populations. So I'm going to welcome Lisa and turn it over to her.
Thank you, Emily, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm so excited to be here to talk about promising high-tech, high-touch solutions for going back to school. As Emily mentioned, I work for the Buffett Early Childhood Institute as the Director of Program Development, and the Institute has several initiatives. One is on workforce and early education, and the other is the opportunity gap. And similar to the superintendents that are presenting, we work with 11 school districts focusing on birth to third grade to ensure that children succeed. So very excited to introduce to you the following panelists. I will start with Dr. Christopher Blair. He's the superintendent of Bullock County School System in Alabama, and he was the network deputy chief for Chicago Public Schools before this, a chief academic officer for Montgomery Public Schools. He has also worked as a teacher, a principal, a post-secondary dean of education, and a program administrator for Alabama Department of Education. Next, we have Dr. Vivian Ekchian, and she's the superintendent for Glendale Unified School District in California. She's been recognized for her keen ability to accelerate student outcomes, and she does this by generating innovative solutions that close opportunity gaps and elevate student voice. She was the deputy superintendent for LA Unified School District for 34 years. Next, we have TJ Parks, and he was the superintendent. He is the superintendent for Hobbs Municipal Schools in New Mexico, and he's a native New Mexican. He has taught middle school science. He's coached basketball, football, track. He has done a lot of different things, but we're just so excited to have all three superintendents here with us, and we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you, with Dr. Christopher Blair. So Dr. Blair, as we turn over to you, I wanted you to tell us about the Bullock County Schools and your region specifically in Alabama, please.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Lisa. I really appreciate this opportunity to share. Yes, I'm located in Bullock County, Alabama. We are in the southern part of the state of Alabama, very rural. We are outside of Montgomery, Alabama, which is the capital of Alabama. And we represent a high poverty district, very rural in terms of our agricultural, main industry here is agricultural, but we do have a lot of students that are high poverty, and the majority of our students are African-American, and we have a growing population of Hispanic students. So in a nutshell, we are a small district, about 10,000 in the population, but we do serve over almost 1,500 students in our district, representing those 10,000 residents in Bullock County.
Great, thank you, Dr. Blair. And as we move on to your slides, could you tell us more about how you're operationalizing the return to school and encouraging equity of both high-tech and high-touch approaches, please?
Right, I'll be glad to talk about that. And if we could forward the slides. Right, one more time. what we were able to do for our district in that we recognize the students that we serve, and we really wanted to make sure that we put together a plan that would serve our students well. And with that, we developed a roadmap back to school, and we called it our Reopening Schools Operational Plan. And we followed guidance from our State Department of Education. And with that guidance, they provided what would be recommendations or guidance or some essential actions. So putting forth a plan, we developed that we would have 3 different options for our scholars to return to school. The first option would be that we would bring everybody in face to face. And these options are guided by what we consider to be areas of either safe or in an alert area. So you'll see green elevating to red is where we had to operate in terms of bringing our students back. So in the green phase, that was where we would determine if it was safe in our community due to the spread of the coronavirus at the community spread level, if it were safe to bring our students in face to face and have traditional school. The next elevation would be if it were unsafe in a moderate level, which were yellow and orange, that our students and our scholars would not be safe to be in a traditional environment, and we would have to offer a virtual blended option, which would mean our students would be in school part of the day, or excuse me, some days, and then they would be at home some other days, which would cause us to really be able to reduce the numbers of students, staff, and students that were in the building on those given days. And the last, which is the highest elevation, was the remote learning / virtual. This is where we determined that the community spread was too high in terms of the positivity rate in COVID, and that our students were not safe to bring back into the building with our staff as well. And what we ended up doing was going through the data after months, June, July, and August, and making the decision that when it became closer to our school reopening, that we would revert to a remote / virtual for the entire school district for a minimum of the first 9 weeks. So that's where we are now. We are serving our students remotely. Our teachers are coming into the classroom or at home, virtually serving our students from 8 in the morning until 1 p.m. in the afternoon in an asynchronous environment.
Great, thank you. And how are these strategies and others being deployed to address learning loss recovery? What are you doing to gauge where students are at the beginning or start of the school year? And what is your response to those results?
Okay, great. If you could see from our next slide, what we were able to do is we had to address equity head on. And the first thing we had to realize is that this summer, we had vulnerable children that we know in March that weren't fully engaged in school. So the first step, we determined students that were high need to include our special education students, students we were serving with EL plans, or any of our students we were serving off of a 504 plan. We pulled those students in for some intense virtual learning with their teachers. When I say pulled in, we issued devices and hotspots, prepared those families for up to 4 days a week, 3 hours a day of one-on-one or small group instruction in reading and math. And we just didn't make it where it was all of the standards for reading and math. We used the State Department's template to develop our 10 critical standards for reading and math. And we pulled those students in and gave them pre-post, but we also gave them intense instruction for up to 4 weeks to really help close the gap that we knew had developed from either some of the experiences in school, but also when they were out of school during that time. And the second thing we had to do was moving forward past the summer, we didn't have a district-wide LMS. So that was a heavy lift for the district because we knew we couldn't provide every student access to a virtual or remote if we did not have an LMS system. So we really pushed hard to develop an LMS and adopt, well, not develop, but to adopt one. So we adopted Schoology, and with that, in the summer and on into the fall, we did a lot of professional development with the administrators, the teachers, the families, include support for the families, our translators. Everyone was trained on what the Schoology platform was and what it would do for our families. So that's the first way we address equity moving. But if you forward to the next slide, what we did to address the learning loss when we returned to school. And I said earlier, we made the decision that we would do totally remote. And we know that not all learners are connected well when it comes to virtual or the remote learning. So we distributed to all of our students to close that technology divide. Anyone who needed a laptop or device, we were able to administer one or to distribute one to those families. So we also, in a rural area, I would say this, one of our challenges was to make sure that every home could access Wi-Fi. So we had one provider that could almost hit every home. So we did get the Wi-Fi connections through that provider to make sure that any child, and it would be multiple in a home if necessary, had access to the gigs and the Wi-Fi they needed to access their content or to be online with their teachers. And with that, every student was enrolled into our virtual remote, and they participate online with their teachers every day from 9 until 12 p.m. Some a little earlier and some a little later, depending on the needs of the student. But that afternoon time, teachers are pulling students in virtually, one-on-one small group, and meeting with parents and even sometimes community stakeholders to make sure that those students are getting what they need outside of that 8 or that 9 to 12 time with their teachers. So again, we're really addressing the needs there. But I would say that one of the things we had to also deal with was the attendance. We do have chronic absenteeism laws in Alabama that force us to look at attendance from either an absence that was excused or unexcused. So we had to determine how would we make sure that our students, and understanding the high poverty students we serve, that they were still in attendance even if they couldn't get online that day. So we did a lot of things to have flexibility to make sure we can count schoolwork. Either they were participating synchronously or asynchronously online, or if they completed their work. If they did the assignments, they did log in or send the assignments to the teacher, we're able to count that as their attendance. So we're not trying to penalize children if they had some technology issues, family issues, or what have you, and they couldn't get online with that teacher. But if they completed their work a day later, they were still counted in attendance for that particular day. And it really gives us a lot of flexibility, so we're not penalizing children for the issues that happen at home. And also, move to the next slide, please. Yeah, the big piece that we did do, and this was a heavy lift again, was to administer assessments to our children. We spent a lot of time with our pre-K students to make sure we're collecting that data, that we know if they are learning what they need, but also they're learning as the teachers are instructing them and their families are supporting them at home. So we have administered reading and math diagnostics to all of our students, grades K through 12. That depends on the type of diagnostic, depends on the type of grade level, but we have focused intensely on our pre-K through third grade, because we know that Alabama has adopted a grade level reading campaign that says by third grade, every scholar must be reading on grade level as determined by certain tests or different data points. But we are focusing on making sure that our students, when they come in, we understand where they are and we can assess them. So during this time, we had to impress upon our parents, it's very important that the students independently take those assessments, because we didn't proctor those assessments. We gave those assessments online. So students were able to log in, take those assessments. In order to authenticate the data, we had to really let our parents know if the students are struggling, we want to know that. We want to know that they could not answer the questions or they got those questions incorrectly, so that we know exactly where they are. So that has helped us over the last 9 weeks really be strategic in how our teachers are have grouped their students for online work and how they support them offline when it comes to that one-on-one. And also, you'll see at the bottom of the screen, we have built in remediation time for our scholars. In our schedule, we have time where teachers are pulling those students and they're grouped according to either standards, skills, or some type of objectives they need to accomplish. And also, we've automated learning paths. So our students, during their time online, they have a learning path that's just for them using some of our computer assisted instruction. So those students, we monitor them. We're looking for the activity completion by the time on task and the number of activities that they're completing, so that we know to fidelity that they're spending that time in either remediation mode or in enrichment mode based on that learning path. And our teachers, again, are monitoring those paths to make sure that it is aligned back to what's happening in that whole group, small group, or that one-on-one time with the child. So there's no redundancy and there's no, just not wasting their time out there in their learning path. So we can move to the next slide. Lastly, what we had to end up doing, and not only are our teachers, providing this instruction one-on-one, but about 2 weeks ago, we had to start bringing students in. We did find that there are students that were struggling out, although we have multiple ways of trying to support them virtually. We're now bringing them on campus in groups of 10. So we have assigned buses and supports to the schools that we can pick up these children and they can be in school for whatever time the teacher has available in that 1 to 3. To have those families, have those children available, either transport them or we have them in school to work with them one-on-one or in small groups, using all the safety precautions we can possibly have, 6-foot distancing, the mask, so that those students are now getting touched face-to-face by the teacher in a safe place, to make sure that also with the extracurricular, the instruction, but also we're providing extracurricular. We're meeting with our clubs for that social emotional piece. We have our girls mentor groups. Our young men we're meeting with our young boys. So we're able to provide those now, giving them face-to-face in those small groups. That really heightened what we thought we needed to do to make sure that we're reaching all of those students. And also, again, it's regular, it's scheduled, and so the families know when we're gonna have those children come and how often they'll be with us. So those are some of the things we're doing to really address that learning loss, to make sure that the time we're spending remotely with our children, it will recoup what they lost or didn't gain during that COVID time, but also we can know that we're moving forward with grade level standards for this school year. And hopefully by the time we bring our children in from off of the remote, they will really be in a place where we know that they're at grade level or just where we need them to continue to move into the next, by the time we go into our next school year.
My last question for you, Dr. Blair, is with all of these variables, parents must be confused and even sometimes frustrated. What are you doing to keep communication open to help alleviate some of their anxiety?
Great question. And we can forward through a couple of the slides there, just some pictures there of our staff. It's really interesting to see them engaging with the students online. But we have a slide. What we've talked about with our parents is trying to keep our parents connected is a challenge, because we do have a lot of households that often change phone numbers, emails are unreliable, and parents' use of technology. Although we know our parents are on technology and their ability to tweet and to do Facebook, they really don't have a lot of skills when it comes to manipulating the learning platform and logging on, checking grades. So we had to do a lot of front work with our parents on learning our Schoology platform. That would virtual open houses. We had them come in on Saturdays. We had sessions late in the evenings. We had translators. We did everything so our parents would know what remote learning was, what it would look like for their children, and how that they would engage in the logging in, getting email reports, or actually participating with their child to keep that child. Some of the children need that parent right beside them to keep them engaged and online and on task. And so we did a lot of telephone messaging. We use our social media to post any announcements. We do live feeds when necessary. Some of our teachers, even when technology is, the computers aren't working, they have sessions with their students through the phone. So we also have sessions with our parents through their phones. We will do Facebook Live to make sure that they're in the parent meetings and that they can see what's happening in any of the activities we have. So also we've spent a lot of funds and time with our translation services. We've hired a lot of translators in our area. They're working with the communities. We have some hub zones where teachers are able to work with those translators. So parents are meeting at churches, they're meeting at certain facilities, and they're actually talking through how to support their child and resources that they can access and how to get online to even connect with the teacher for additional support. And also we're sending out virtual progress reports, and we're surveying a lot. We're asking our parents a lot of questions to make sure that they're comfortable, they know what they need, and if they're comfortable with the decisions we're making. And we've learned through this COVID time that our participation rate has shot up in terms of engagement. Parents are more active now because they're able to tune in virtually, maybe take a lunch break, get in on it. But our participation virtually has really increased. Participation has increased because of use of technology to get more parents engaged in the meetings. And also another big move was that our state of Alabama put some of its COVID funding from the federal government in the hands of parents to subsidize their broadband. So our parents from August until December could complete a form and have their broadband or their cable services that their internet providers paid for through December to ensure that not only through the devices the school are issuing, but also that they now as a family can have that broadband connection in their home. And that came through the governor of Alabama.
Thank you, Dr. Blair. Now I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Vivian Ekchian. And Vivian, could you let us know more about your school district and the Glendale community, please? Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the invitation. It's been such a pleasure getting to know the co-panelists. And Glendale is in California. It's in Southern California. It's one of the 80 school districts. If we can go to the next slide, please. In Los Angeles County. It's the third largest in Los Angeles County, and it is incredibly diverse. Diverse in socioeconomics. As you can see, 54% of our students are on free and subsidized meals. We also have more than 50 languages spoken in our homes. In our 32 schools, we have a variety. We have highest achieving schools, and we have schools that are working towards accelerating learning. And then came March 13th. So suddenly, from being a school district that was on an upward trajectory, we faced something that we did not expect. And none of us, regardless of how many years we've been in education, really had experienced a pandemic that was global before. If we can go to the next slide, please. So what we had to rely on is what we had committed to, and that was our why. So we continue to focus on our guiding principles of excelling together to provide our students with endless opportunities for success, continuing to focus on the social emotional needs of our students and their families, making sure that student voices were heard, and also continuing to transform our school district into what we were hoping to accomplish, which was a world-class, globally competitive school district. And I just want to pause for a moment to say that parents were in shock because schools in our district and in our city of Glendale are really the centers of the community. So for us to say that we had to close school wasn't just the change in the educational delivery system. It was as if we had separated them from what they knew and the relationships they had. We have a very strong parent-teacher association. We have organizations that support our schools, but the schools were the centers. So when the schools had to close, everyone took it incredibly personally. It wasn't just addressing the pandemic and everyone's health, but it really had robbed them of their social emotional support system that was in place. If we can go please next. So obviously equity by design, closing the digital divide, which we were planning on closing over a number of years, suddenly had to happen within a short period of time. So we did distribute over 15,000 Chromebooks to our students, 1,700 headphones, 1,864 hotspots and webcams. And the list continues to grow. Most importantly, we had to work with our parents on their ability to use technology and support our students at home. So all that you're looking at on this slide is really an operational experience like no other, because the purchasing and the delivery and the pickup, physically distanced with masks and all that came with it, was truly something that we had to come up with within a period of 1 week. Obviously, it's taken us a lot longer to really make sure that everyone's connectivity is in place, as we have various homes with various abilities to access technology for the use of learning and mental health. And also, it was really important to us to continue our nutritional supports for our students. We made sure that 2 meals a day were served every day. And it's amazing that we have served really over 500,000 since March. So 4,300 meals a day, 21,500 meals a week. And unfortunately, which is a sign of the economy and a sign of parents and their abilities to work and offer food on the table, is that the numbers continue to grow, which is a very good indication that as a nation, as a state, as a city, it's not just about the educational experience, it's the entire family experience that we're focusing on. I'm pleased to now know that USDA has extended our authorization for free meals, but the reality is the free meals are so much more beyond. It's really one way of checking to see how our parents are doing, because we connect with our students every day, but we're not exactly sure, but the parents do come and pick up their meals, and that is another way in which we can connect real time with them in person. So let's go to the next slide. And I think what we have to highlight beyond our parents and students, of course, our unsung heroes are our educators, who were at varying degrees of comfort in using technology as instructional strategies of delivery. And suddenly they found themselves at home with their own children or with their own family members who needed their support, and not an overnight ability to deliver instruction to students at varying degrees of comfort of learning through devices. So professional development, of course, was front and center. Prior to the beginning of this academic year, we took an entire week and offered professional development to all of our teachers, which was voluntary. And I'm pleased to say that many teachers and substitute teachers participated every day. And then we had 2 days of mandatory professional development. And the process of learning wasn't just about knowing how to deliver instruction or how to put your lessons together, how to access the technology as an educator, but also how do you connect with our students? How do you connect with the families? How do you speak to kids you've really not met before? Because it was their first experience. We have a tradition here of a red carpet experience every year in person with lots of music and fanfare and alumni returning. And this year it took on a completely different type of experience for all of us. So I do think the question came up because our focus today is on our primary students. How were we assessing them? We took the first 3 days for every teacher and every student to have them assess one-to-one. So we used our introductory week, our welcome week in particular, for assessment of our most youngest students. And we learned a lot. We learned that learning loss had taken place. And for others, we learned that they did not speak the language. And we had to come up with additional strategies to connect with them.
Thank you, Dr. Ekchian. And that brings me to a question for you. How did you strategize to meet the social emotional needs of your students and families?
So the social emotional needs of our students and families have always been important to us. If we may go to the next slide. It's all about relationships. So we shared with our educators, with our administrators and all staff members that until you know a child, you can't teach a child. So we had a red carpet virtual welcome week. We made our students feel as safe as possible and valued as possible, which is really the fabric of the virtual community. And we wanted them to implement trauma-informed instructional strategies and the downshift from the fear as to where they were and what could possibly happen during this COVID, and sometimes the loneliness, to predictable routines, positive interactions, and elevating student voice. So the dialogue and our schedules are focused primarily on synchronous instruction, is not just for the delivery of instruction as it relates to the content, but it is also about how they feel, how they connect with their peers, what it is that they want to bring to the table, and what happens to be on their minds every day as they start the day with their teachers. We also have individual counseling and support groups offered at all of our schools by grade level. We have weekly parent and guardian support groups at all school sites. We have clinicians and mental health interns assigned, 31 of them, to our schools. And we also pay very close attention to depression and suicidal ideation. And I'm sad to say that although today's conversation is primarily about our younger students, we're seeing quite a bit of evidence of depression in our students who are middle or high school students, and we have to address them front and center. And the only way we can do that is to strengthen our relationships. And we offer mindfulness lessons weekly, and videos are provided to our students. But most importantly, they need to know who they can reach out to when they feel depressed, or there's something that's bothering them that they cannot communicate at home, or they feel that they need help with. So we're really opening our doors. And I'm pleased to say that, as Dr. Blair said, parent engagement has actually increased, and parents have become much more courageous to say, I don't know how to deal with my child who just wants to move from his bed to the desk and does not show the same level of energy that he demonstrated before. So parents are connecting with us differently, and our weekly panel conversations, responses are posted. So even those that do not want to self-identify have access to the information and are able to find support real time over the weekend, every day, every evening. We have staff available who can connect with them. So if we may go to the next slide. So as we're speaking about parents and students being in different places at home, very early in our pandemic experience, we realized that we had parents who were looking for a job, or parents who could not stay at home, or parents who were working multiple jobs, and parents of students who were on free and subsidized meals, parents whose children were homeless or in foster care and needed help. So we made that decision, which at the time was considered to be a high-risk decision, to introduce something we called an extension of our childcare technology learning pods. And we offered them at 20 of our elementary schools, and we continue to do so for our kindergarten through 6th grade students, and particularly our essential workers who have loved the idea of being able to bring their children to our schools for us to be able to facilitate the learning for them while they're learning from their teachers who are teaching from home. And they can go and save lives. They can go and put out fires. They can both go in the hospitals and help others who are in greatest need. And our governor was savvy in identifying us as educators, as essential workers, which really helped us determine why we were here, highlighted our belief system, and communicated to the larger public that our essential work was being in charge of other children so that they could do what they needed to do for our larger community. So we have a maximum of 12 students in every pod. Pods are family members, so they're multi-age. We try to reduce the contact with outside as much as possible. The same adults are in charge of the supervision of the pods. We're very, very careful about hand washing, wearing masks. We are focusing particularly on the adults that serve the students, their substitute teachers, or their other classified staff, and we're not moving them from room to room, and we're building relationships with our students. So whether it's the first day and they may have a difficult time turning on the device, or they have connectivity problems that can happen anywhere, or they don't understand the question, the facilitators 6 feet apart from the students are there the entire time. And that was one way in which we're closing the achievement and opportunity gap real time versus waiting for learning loss to occur. And we're seeing that from the 2,700 parents who said they wanted to send their kids to school, we're 1,100 strong, and that is due to staffing. We have a waiting list for more children who would like to come to the pods, but we have to staff up carefully and make sure that we stay within the 10% that our public health department is expecting us to have at our school sites, 10% of our students. So breakfast and lunch is also delivered to the classrooms, and meals are in the classroom. We do have plenty of time for them to play outside. We've changed the way we play games outside on our playgrounds. They're all 6 feet apart with their masks, but you know what surprised us most? Our students did not have a problem wearing masks. They learned so quickly. And all the things that we thought would be taking a long time, like the hand washing stations that we have and the protocols that we go through, our kids have adapted very, very quickly. And visitors right now are not allowed, but we have virtual visitors. So we have virtual parents who come in as tutors and or support. We have additional staff members who also provide extended care until 5:30. And I think it has lifted the spirit of our community to know that we didn't shut our doors to all of our community members, but by need really welcomed our students during a time when no one else could come.
So you have one more slide
Yes.
very quickly, and then we'll move on to TJ. Thank you.
So most importantly, as Michael Fullen, he's one of our innovators and reformers, shifting expectations and extending kindness inward and outward has been a theme for us every day. And the fact that we all have to act courageously so we can come back differently. And finally, the ultimate question being, are we willing to use this opportunity to create the kind of educational system we want? We recognize the behind the curtain view of there were many things that were driven by a lack of equity that became very, very visible to us. And we do not want to come back to what we were before, but even better. So thank you for allowing me to share my slides with you and share
Thank you,
about
Dr.
the district.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Ekchian. That was incredible, and I look forward to learning even more from you. Now we'll have Dr. TJ Parks share about his district and the Hobbs community. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and it's a real pleasure to be here with you today. And I absolutely appreciate being able to share some time with our colleagues across the United States. As we look at this slide, this really brings us back to home because children are who we are in education. We are Hobbs schools. 10 years ago, we created a pathway called the Hobbs Way, and the intent of the Hobbs Way was to get away from the continual political shifts that impact education every 4 years or 2 years as the elections go. And with that, we've been very fortunate in that we've taken a district who, although wasn't hurting, we weren't performing as well as we would like to. Today, I'm proud to say that we're the second highest performing school district in the state of New Mexico as far as large schools. As you look at this slide at the very bottom, and as Emily will shares the PowerPoints with you, our entire reentry plan will be included with that PowerPoint. And we've spent a lot of time and energy, as everyone has, with their reentry plans. And so if you could on the next slide. I always like to show this slide, and all of us could put many more flags into this, but the reality is the pandemic started 6.5 months ago. We've had to change an entire educational process that is 385 years old in less than 5 months. And as we went through that, it's been very difficult. And I think we've all felt the shift of this. In New Mexico, we are governed through our State Department. And so we have very little local control. And so as of actually throughout the entire summer, we had planned on giving our parents and our students 2 options of being completely online or coming back fully to school. And abruptly on July 24th, we were told that every school district in the state of New Mexico would start in a remote setting. So that gave us literally 2 weeks to prepare completely for a remote setting in which we were able to do just because of the tremendous staff that we have here in Hobbs. But those shifts don't come automatically. They come with a lot of time and energy and methodologies as we go through that. And so if we could go to the next slide, please. One of the things that we have learned over time is that if you don't tell your message, somebody's going to tell your message for you. And so we've really created, I think, a very robust methodology of communicating with our community. You can't rely completely on Facebook or Twitter or your newspaper. You've got to give everybody different opportunities to be able to meet that medium with you. And I think one of the smartest things that we did was hire 2 public relations staff, one just recently, who are non-educators. Because we have a tendency in education to talk educational lingo, and a lot of times parents don't hear that. In New Mexico, we will call it an IEP, individualized educational plan for our special needs students. Parents may not understand that. And so our public relations staff talks the way that parents understand. And so they are on our social media all day long. They're trying to communicate and answer questions constantly as we go through that. We've used YouTube for presentations. Of course, everyone is using Zoom. And then honestly, phone calls is still a very appropriate methodology in which we've had to communicate with our staff. In New Mexico, we really went through 2 different scenarios. At the end of, from March 13th until the end of May, the entire push of the spring from the state was to get students graduated. And that was where the focus was. And so literally, if a student was in the upper grades, if they were happy with their grade, they weren't required to re-engage with the schools, which caused some tremendous learning loss that we've absolutely found out and been validated through our Legislative Finance Committee. But along with that, we've had to re-engage with those kids, which I think has been probably one of the most difficult things for us to do. And if we could go to the next step, slide, please. So the stakeholder engagement, our parent-teacher conferences, and we are still in a remote state. There are only 4 counties in our entire state that are still remote. The rest of them are able to go back face-to-face in a hybrid mode. We happen to be one of the districts that is not in a remote state, or that is in a remote state. And if I didn't say it earlier, we are in southeastern New Mexico. We literally border the state of Texas. And so our community sees how Texas operates, and they operate completely different in a COVID environment than what New Mexico does. It's a very confusing format for us because 3 districts that literally align with us on the other side of the state line, 3 miles from where my office is, are completely 100% open. Yet we are absolutely 100% remote. Just recently, within the last 2 to 2.5 weeks, we've been able to bring pre-K through 3 back in a 5-to-1 setting. Fortunately, we've been able to allow every child to come back into the classroom with their teacher at least 1 day a week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, with Wednesday being a day that we would clean our facilities, and Saturdays we sanitize our facilities as well. We do have daily virtual check-ins, especially for our K2. They're just smiley faces, sad faces, so we understand, you know, if the kids are struggling, and if we see that a kid is struggling, we automatically contact our social workers to make connect with the parents to see how things are going. Our technology department still works on Tuesdays and Thursdays working with the community. So if someone has a problem with some of their technology, they can contact our technology department. And then we record all of our meetings, whether they be with teacher to teacher or with teacher to student, so they can go back asynchronously and look at that as well. One of the most important things we did was find a parent resource page. And again, tried to create this document where it was written in a language where parents could understand that. A lot of them are step-by-step slides. In other words, how to check in and check on your students' grades, make sure that they are engaging with your teachers every single day. And then the child care supports whenever we're in a remote setting was critical for our community so they could get back to work, so the economy could get rolling again. We have partnered with daycares. We provide technology support for those daycare centers. So we send our technology department to various daycare centers throughout the week to ensure that they have the proper support. And then the daycares throughout our community have actually expanded their age range to allow more kids to come in, again, to allow parents to go back to work. And then the other thing that we've done is worked, partnered with the clergy in our local churches. So many of our churches have opened up their facilities to allow members of their congregation and even beyond for children to come in during daycare for those times. On the teacher admin side, the teacher resource page is similar to the parent resource page. Again, it gives them resources for that, so they can manage the day-to-day. And then one thing that we've added this year is an Achieve Excellence. One thing that we do know in education is that we lose a lot of teachers. And so we have to make sure that we mentor those beginning teachers, and the Achieve Excellence does that. We have modified who we are into our individual campuses and created campus instruction mentors to help support the staff at each campus. Again, even though we're not a large district, 10,000 students, we have 19 campuses, 13 elementary schools. It's impossible to get one message out to every single teacher. And so you have to do a train the trainer to promote your messages and make sure that the methodologies get out there. And then from the district level, we have 4 instructional coaches and 1 technology coach that have certainly helped us. The state of New Mexico has allowed us to participate in what's called an extended learning time program. With that, we extended our number of days from a normal 180-day calendar to 190 days. With that, we had to agree to provide 80 hours of professional development to our teachers. On that link, you're going to find some offerings that we provide to our staff. We're able to count part of that 80 hours through our professional learning communities on Wednesdays, in which we normally would do an early release, but since we're in a remote learning, they do still have that 1.5 hours to 2 hours to work together. And then the letters training, and then this is the first year that the state has mandated dyslexia training for every first grade teacher in the state of New Mexico. So the next slide, please. Equity access, I think, is one of the key buzzwords that we have throughout the United States. And I hope that it's not only a buzzword, I hope that we're taking it very serious, because if we've learned anything through the COVID crisis, it's creating a horrendous gap between the haves and the have-nots. Just as some of our previous speakers talked about, we have provided a free breakfast and free lunch since March 16th. We provide those at all 19 of our campuses. We also bus those meals out to our rural areas. So no child is left hungry. They're given a breakfast, and then we run a lunch run during the lunchtime as well. So every child gets 2 meals a day. And then for our students who are truly at risk, we have a nonprofit organization that we partner with called the Weekend Hunger Initiative, the Hobbs. And they actually provide food every Friday for our free and reduced students. And that food has anything in there from meals that they can self-prepare. Most of them are like cereals that will not go bad, but it allows that child to be able to have enough food for the entire weekend. Recently, we purchased a backpack for every one of our at-risk students. So out of 10,000 students, 60% of our children are considered at risk. So we purchased 6,000 backpacks that were fully equipped with everything that is on our normal supply list, which cost us about $256,000. We know that the way the economy is currently going and where we're at in southeastern New Mexico, because we're a very intense oil and gas related area. And so we've had a tremendous crunch to our economy. So we've seen a high risk for our students. And then we have monthly meetings with the District Equity Council. Our federal programs director is the lead chair on this. I also sit on this. And we bring in community members, parents, and students from every walk of life. Prior to the COVID crisis in March, we met face-to-face, and now we're meeting through Zoom meetings. And because they do come from different, we have special needs, parents with special needs children, we have different ethnicities on there. They are allowed to bring their own personalities to that and ensure that what we're doing is providing opportunities for every child throughout our district. We have reallocated our social workers and counselors. We provide SPED and EL services for face-to-face and virtual. As I said earlier, we brought back our pre-K through 3 in a 5-to-1 mode. The week prior to that, we have brought back every one of our special needs children that are resource, what we refer to as D-level, and our medically fragile children. And they actually, each one of those comes 4 days a week. So we ensure that we provide all the services that we need. And then through the technology, we provide tablets for our pre-K and then laptops for our K through 3, as well as hotspots for all and Wi-Fi access for all of our other children. Next slide, please. So through our curriculum and instruction, we have been able to assess our children. We use the ECOT, Early Childhood Observation tool, for our kindergartners. And again, because they are coming in a 5-to-1 methodology or 5-to-1 ratio, we're able to do that. Health screening with our nurses as the children come in. And we also use the Brigance test. iStation is what we use in the state of New Mexico. And we actually are able to use the iStation remotely, and we were able to test all of our K through 5 students on that. I was really excited with our Renaissance programs with Mayan, with the number of reading. And if you look over on the right-hand column, we've had students read 28,000 books since August the 16th. The thing that I'm always surprised at and shocked and just amazed by our students is the number of books and pages that students read prior to 8 o'clock. Because I think most adults, we think that kids have a tendency to sleep in, but a lot of our children are reading while they're lying in bed. On that. On our iStation, K through 3, we've used that to identify instructional support needs in our reading. And I will tell you, we've had a very strong emphasis on our early literacy. And I want to give a shout out to Judy Wallace, who I know has signed on to this, and she has actually helped our district surpass the state in our performance of our academic performance in reading on this. And it's literally due to Judy's guidance of our lower elementary schools with this. But the emphasis that we've placed on early literacy has shown all throughout as those kids have progressed, and we're very proud of where we've come from and where we are today on that. So I think that's all that I've got.
Great, thank you to all of our panelists. We're going to move now, and I'm going to ask one question of all of you to engage in an open discussion. There were so many interesting strategies that discuss some common approaches and then some different ones that were based on your own students and community. So again, thank you so much for sharing. I am learning, and I will take some of these lessons learned back to our superintendents that we work with in Metro Omaha. So thank you very much. So this is like, I had 4 questions, so I have to figure out which one. And I think because I'm really into family engagement, and many of you talked about your communication with families, I wanted to ask, how are you reaching lost families and encouraging them to re-enroll or enroll their students into kindergarten? That's a big question nationally. Who would like to answer that question?
So if everyone is seeing me, it looks like the screen is on me, so I'll take the pressure off on Vivian and Christopher on that. That is a difficult process, and we have lost a large number of our kindergarten, what was our projected kindergarten students. And I think a lot of it is the fear of the COVID crisis. And so we've had to rely on all of our communication skills, whether a lot of those families do rely on Facebook, on the social media, but just the good old fashioned phone system and contacting them, having messages in their churches, in their places where they worship. I mean, we've had to rely on every methodology that we could to try to re-engage with them with that. So out of 10,000 students, we actually are upside down 750 students, and we've lost 255 of those students to homeschooling. And a lot of it is just fearful of being involved in an environment where COVID is around. But the communication piece is really difficult in an atmosphere where you can't see people or can't engage with them face to face.
Thank you. Christopher?
Right. I again echo what TJ Park said. We are challenged in that. We found that some of our issues were communication. We really, again, I said earlier, our parents, their phones changed between March and June. So we did do registration back in the spring. So what we did in the summer is we just had multiple, even a week-long robust kindergarten registration. And we found parents that just didn't know it was time to register the child, or they were confused regarding if the children were going to have school. And then Alabama is, sadly, we don't require kindergarten. So again, we have to, impress upon parents to put their children in school, to make sure that those that we had in pre-K do enroll in our kindergarten, automatically enroll those students. So we just did a big push, and really end of July, 1st of August, that's when the families started to show up again that we knew were projected to come in. So we're about 20 short, which is about 10% less than we had last year, which is not good for us. But we have also had a declining enrollment in our kindergarten due to the age of the residents. Our median age is going up. So we're having less of that age, those aged children in the community. But just that robust registration, multiple weeks and multiple times, gathered those children that we knew that should be in the schools.
Great, thank you. Vivian?
So we've been primarily making phone calls, and we're really planning for January, because as we're speaking to parents, they're just not excited for the youngest students to be in distance learning. And that is a growth mindset. We know once they try it, they see the value of it. But since it is a philosophical disposition by them, we're saying, okay, so when in January that is our first group to come back, TKK and first grade, would you be on board? And the responses have been primarily yes. So we really have no choice but to plan for the future. Enrollment has declined at the kindergarten level, and just like Christopher mentioned, it's not mandatory in California, so parents are opting out.
Right, and you have the transitional K as well as kindergarten, so.
That's right.
Yes, thank you for that. Well, it's time to move to Q&A, and if we have time, we'll come back to the round robin questions that I had for you. But the first question is, what services, resources do you provide for 3- and 4-year-olds? And we'll start with Vivian, because you probably can explain a little bit more about transitional K.
So we have continued the services we had before. We actually started July 1st with the childcare program, and particularly are focusing on literacy for those grade levels. And we have integrated additional teachers, substitutes that we've hired to support that grade level, because it is difficult for them to be able to access learning. And we have not excluded any student by age from the elementary level in our technology learning pods.
Chris,
I'd like to chime in on that if we could. In Hobbs, New Mexico, kindergarten is mandatory in the state of New Mexico, but we offer pre-K 3- and 4-year-olds. We've been able to bring back our pre-K students in a 5-to-1 setting in every one of our classes. And I'm very proud to say we've got about 90% participation of those parents that again, want those children to receive those services. So we're bringing back all of those kids, all of our pre-K 3- and 4-year-olds in a 5-to-1 setting where they get to come to school at least one day a week.
Christopher?
Well, you know, we are providing some wraparound services. We have a partnership with the Alabama Department of Education for a 0 to 3 program. So we're already grabbing families early on, and we have these home partners. So working with the Alabama Department of Education, our home partners are able to really connect with those parents to make sure that the home activities are being conducted, as well as that the connection to the children, to the families are making the connection to be online with their teachers every day. We have not brought any of our pre-K students, and we have pre-K 4 in the building. We haven't brought any of those students in yet, but we're not shying away from it. We just hadn't found a need yet to bring them in, because with the Department of Early Childhood Education connecting with the home visits, we're able to really keep those children connected. And we've compacted their times. We, you know, again, we only had them for half a day, but we have a few hours a day with those children throughout our 9 to 12 time.
Okay, Christopher, we're going to start with you this time for this question. Have your achievement goals changed for alignment with where students are for this school year?
Right. Our achievement goals haven't changed. We always ask for 1 year's worth of growth from every child. Now, that expectation is still there for that child, but we do know that we're measuring the 1 year's worth of growth against the achievement benchmark. And so we're still asking, and our benchmark level is a level 3, you know, level 4 being the highest. So we're still pushing our children regarding having those expectations that they master the standards, but they get 1 year's worth of growth regardless of hitting that level 3 or not, because we know we don't want to lose ground. So this year, we still have set trajectories based on our mid-year data. So we're using pre-test data and our diagnostic data now to see if it aligned with where the children were and what gaps we closed in the summer, so that we can see if we can project for them by mid-year to be halfway, to achieve half of that year's worth of growth, or if they're going to be close to where we would think they're going to achieve grade level by the end of the year. So our expectations are still high, but our services, we're just going deeply as we can with our families to make sure that the critical standards we know need to be mastered, that's the focus, and the supports to get them there with those expectations that you get a year's worth of growth, and that we can accelerate to make sure that you still get your grade level achievement by the end of the school year. And our state is still going to issue that end of the year test. So we can't lose sight of that grade level test that's going to be administered for those students at the end of the school year. So we have to keep that bar set for those children and just, you know, love them through the process so that they grow and understand where they are. And the parents really, you know, help support and push them along with what we need them to do to get the children to grow.
Great, thank you. Vivian and TJ, would you also like to respond?
I'd like to just talk about the fact that our teachers on Wednesday afternoons use that as their grade level dialogue time or department dialogue time. And the assessment of how students are making progress and the collaboration on strategies that will help them accelerate around their instructional priorities have been really valuable. So the scheduling of time for our educators to be able to still focus on students and their progress has been a meaningful experience.
So to chime in on that, our goals certainly have not changed. I think our state had the foresight to allow us to apply for extended learning time, as I had stated before. So on a normal 180-day school year, the current school year in this, Hobbs, New Mexico will be 190 days. Also through a 21st century grant, we have an extended school day in all 13 of our elementary schools that we're able to offer services for every one of our students and our working parents. And then we typically average between 15 and 20% in summer school. And our summer school is not only for remediation, but it's also for enrichment for our students. So between those three measures of an extended learning year, extended day, and summer school, we certainly have not lowered our standards. So we still expect our children to achieve proficiency in all of our standards.
Thank you. The next question is, you are doing a wonderful job maintaining learning for the children. However, with the schools in many areas are trying to go back to school, not remotely, but in the classroom, what precautions are you taking to make it secure for the other children and the teachers to be in the classroom?
I can speak about what we have done in preparation. All the signage, all the hand washing stations, the temperature taking stations, the contact tracing protocols, all these things are actually in place. We hope to be able to bring back our students with special needs in self-contained classrooms and our refugee students and English language learners at their earliest developmental levels back sooner, but we have to within the 10% parameter of the school number. It is going to be a staggered return. But the preparation of the school took a long time and certainly was incredibly expensive, but that was not as difficult as all of us as adults that had to change the way we think.
So we also, again, because we are remote, we are allowed to bring back 5 to 1 in our pre-K through 3. We check every child's temperature as they come on. We do social distance on the bus, so we limit 1 per seat on every school bus. We've actually upgraded all the filters into our school system to MERV 13s along with that. And then of course the social distancing, the hand washing, the protocols that are in place for that have been instrumental as well.
And also in our setting, we've brought back just small groups of students. So we really have done the same social distancing requirements that we've had for our adults, and everyone's required to sign in. We do take temperature checks with our children. We know exactly where they are in the building, and we're spacing the children out. We are anticipating this Friday, we're going to make a decision of how we're going to return beginning October 30th. And that return is going to, October 30th. That return is going to allow us to either have the blended where we'll have smaller populations, but half the class size potentially in the building for a couple days a week. So we may have to change up some of the things we're doing because we don't believe, and this is just putting it on record, every child is going to always be 6 feet apart. So, but we do believe in the, frequent cleaning of high touch areas, frequent hand sanitation, wearing your mask, and, definitely getting some outside time so that they can, take off the mask and things like that. But we're anticipating that we can keep some protocols in place that we have to ensure the safety of all of our children when we do bring them back in a blended or face-to-face with the full class.
The next question is related. How are you handling classroom settings for students whose parents have opted to send them to school buildings, but have used 504 health plans to not require them to wear masks? How do you maintain least restrictive environments for those students while protecting the health, including anxiety over being in a room with students who don't have to wear masks for the other students in the classroom?
Currently, because we are a remote setting in Lee County, attendance in person is voluntary. And because, again, it's pushed down through the state level, if a child, even though They have a 504 plan. If they refuse to wear a mask, if they're not able to wear a mask, they're not able to attend a school face-to-face in the state of New Mexico right now.
I think there are opportunities for our adults to be wearing not just masks, but additional gowns, gloves, and we have used that in our distance learning technology pods for students with special needs that are attending. However, wearing masks is a requirement, but the adults certainly have additional levels of safety in order to continue to serve the students if they can't be physically distanced from them.
Great. And Christopher?
Right. We haven't faced the issue. We've had, all of our students are able to, that adults and students are wearing the mask. We haven't had any child that has a health record or any parent that presented a current health issue with not wearing the mask when they're on campus. So I look forward to maybe if that pops up that we'll have to, be very creative in how we handle that so that everyone still feels safe. If we have a child or an adult, for that case, who can't wear the mask or fulfill the distancing or different requirements we have.
Our next question is, how important is digital literacy technology as we move forward in a post-COVID world?
Well, I'll jump in. I think it's very important. One of the things that we've envisioned for the future is that, how do we reinvent schools or do schools differently so that technology isn't something you have to learn to do when it's time to use it. So it's a part of everyday life. We do use the Cogni standards and it deals with the technology environment. So we've learned early on that we want our students and our adults really using technology for learning. So this gave us a great opportunity to really get over that learning curve really quickly and making sure that practices moving forward that, even working with district teams, that we can do a lot of things remotely that we didn't have to do face-to-face. Some jobs you can do from home. So learning can occur from homes. And that's what our parents are learning. Some of the children are faring a whole lot better than their parents thought. So I think it's very important that we get a, growth mindset and everyone regarding the technology and that, we, not saying we change with the times, but we really do what we need to do to make sure that we're progressive, innovative, not stressed out about it, but, we're all learning it to use it in a way that it's productive for ourselves and our students.
I think for the adults, the use of technology has been liberating because the ability to learn in larger groups on topics that may have been at different levels of comfort to discuss in one smaller setting, the parent engagement piece that has increased tremendously, and competency-based learning that can be promoted through the use of technology. These are all opportunities for innovation that we can't miss, and we just have to build on that and allow our students to really work through technology in ways that they've not been able to access content. It truly has created an opportunity to level the playing field for many who did not have the device, therefore not had access.
To quote Winston Churchill, you never waste a good crisis. So I think the pandemic has actually allowed us to force ourselves to move forward. And I think there's going to be a lot of the technological advances that we're never going to go backwards. I don't think we will ever have another snow day or another weather delayed day because the kids will be able to learn remotely automatically. And I think that's going to be tremendous. So, for superintendents, I think that's going to be a stress reliever because that's one of the most difficult things we have to do is delay or suspend school for the day. So anymore, we'll just say, this is going to be a technology day for us. And I think we'll be able to move forward. And I think you're going to increase your school day is no longer going to be an 8 to 3. Those children are going to be able to learn beyond the school day. And it's going to be limitless. So I'm excited about what's going to happen, what's going to occur even beyond what the pandemic has forced us with the technology.
Great, thank you. Next question, and I wanted to remind everyone that there will be a poll that will be pushed out for you to complete in the next 6 minutes. The next question, the panelists may have mentioned this, but in each of their districts, counties, states, who is the final decision maker as to what the status of schools will be? District level board, county level or state level, health department, the governor. And I see the poll is out, so please respond. But yes, if you could answer that question, thank you.
I'll jump in. Ours is easy. Ours comes directly from the governor. We literally have no local control over. I take that back. She gives us a level that you can go. For example, if you know the state of New Mexico, Albuquerque, which is the largest city in our state, their county, Bernalillo County, is a green county, so they could go face to face. But Albuquerque chose to stay remote for the rest of this semester. So we are given the option. You can't go beyond what that option is. But the county where we live in southeastern New Mexico, we are remote, but that's determined by the governor.
So for us, it's by the governor, but our local public health certainly gives us the green light to proceed. And then our Board of Education exercises its option on what type of return we plan.
Right. And that's similar to, we follow the governor's orders that's coming through regarding opening, but how we open is a local decision. And that's a recommendation that the superintendent can make to the board and the board could approve it, or there's actually authority that the superintendent could actually close school or open school without the authority of the board or the governing body giving that permission. But it all does start with an executive order from the governor regarding any of the opening status that our students or their school systems have to be in.
Thank you so much. We did get through the Q&A unless anyone else would like to ask a question. We had a couple of other questions that were cross-cutting earlier that I would like to go back to if possible. And one is just, how are you managing parent anxieties? You did talk about how students who are in kindergarten and might not, their parents are nervous about sending them, or they feel that kindergarten is compulsory. How are you dealing with, the different issues with parents and them feeling secure about sending their children to school overall?
I think trying to keep a positive message about what we are and ensuring that we have taken all the protocols in place to make sure that their children are safe. Again, using social media to post videos of what we've done to provide that safety net, but having conversations, allowing them, they are allowed to come up to the school and visit with principals and have some of that face-to-face, allowing parents to vent. This is a stressful time for everyone, and people just need to have that opportunity to be able to communicate. But we use social media for a lot of ours, and again, trying to push out a very positive message, showing and being very transparent about what's out there.
I think it's been helpful to have them participate in some of the decisions. We've done a lot of surveys to solicit their feedback of how they feel. And we've adjusted and our mental health forums and messages that we're sending out, and building trust over time has been helpful. But when our parents feel that they are part of the decision, they react much more positively than when they think a decision has been made without them. So stakeholder participation has been key in our city.
So one other question, and Dr. Ekchian, you mentioned creating a new way forward, and both Dr. Blair and Dr. Parks also talked about some of the highlights or bright spots that have happened as a result of COVID and what you all have been able to do within your districts. But if you had a crystal ball, what would you say is, for the three of you, would be the one way that you would move forward? You wouldn't look back. It's totally changed the way that you do school.
At least for my scenario, I hope that we will continue to advocate for competency-based learning and move away from seat time and really personalize experiences, as we've seen through the use of technology, so students are not kept in pace with their peers, but really are given the opportunity to receive differentiated support and opportunities.
Thank you. Dr. Parks?
I think the uniqueness of what it's created with the technology and the giving parents a choice. So in our district, we have talked about an online education for a number of years. And again, the pandemic forced us into that. And so allowing some parents opportunities that they can choose the direction in which they would like to go. It also has really created an awful lot of communication and discussions from parents to teachers, teachers to students in off hours. And some of our younger teachers are very comfortable with the methodologies of using the technology for that. So I think it's opened up a lot of doors that I think we were waiting to open, and for whatever reason, just waiting to get permission, and the pandemic forced us to have that permission.
It's time for me to turn this back over to Emily. But again, thank you so much. I am so honored to have been the moderator for this session. Again, I have learned a lot, and look forward to sharing the recorded session with the folks that I work with in Metro Omaha. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to all of our incredible, thank you to Lisa for moderating that panel, and to all of our incredible panelists, TJ Parks, Vivian Ekchian, and Christopher Blair. I think Christopher actually had to log off a little bit early, but I wanted to say thank you to all of you for participating in this webinar. And if you haven't had a chance yet, we do have a few minutes, so if you could please complete our quick little poll survey, that would be, it's a really helpful way for us to continue improvement of these webinars. And so just want to say thank you for your time. This has been such an excellent conversation. And for everyone, it's important for you to know we have posted a bunch of links in the chat. If you didn't have a chance to look through all that stuff, you will receive an email with all of the resources and links included in that email, along with the slides and the recording and everything from today's webinar. And we just wanted to remind you of the great webinars we have coming up in the next 2 weeks. So next week, we've got a session with the voices of early childhood educators. So what early educators could teach parents, teachers, and the rest of us, and why it matters now. So what they're learning about how to continue their work in this pandemic. And then on Tuesday the 13th, we've got this really excellent double header, first with scaling solutions for the childcare crisis, technology and shared services. That's at 12:30 p.m. Eastern, 9:30 a.m. Pacific. And then finally at 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific, we have telenovela as teacher, Vivian and Too Small to Fail, reaching parents where they are. This is a really interesting and exciting partnership where there's early childhood and early learning messages literally woven into the storylines of the telenovela soap operas, and it's a way to reach parents, and we're super excited about that and super excited to have that, to feature that partnership. So thank you so much for all of your time. I mean, it's very unusual, but we're actually finishing just a few minutes early. So hopefully you can take that extra 10 minutes or 8 minutes of your day and make use of it in some way. I just posted, I know Lisa introduced herself, but we didn't post that much about the Buffett Early Childhood Institute, so I just went ahead and did that. Again, all of these links will be shared in an email that will go out to everybody at the end of this week. So thank you all for your time. Thank you so much to our stellar superintendents. We know how busy you are, and really, really appreciate the time that you took with us today. And thank you again to Lisa. So we'll go ahead and log off. Thanks to all of you, and hopefully you'll join us again. Bye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Bye. Thank you.